Welcome back to the My Latin Life podcast. Since 2014, My Latin Life has been your trusted guide to traveling and living in Latin America. Our guest today is Jake Nomada, here for his 2026 appearance. He was last on the podcast as a solo episode back in November 2022. So a lot has changed, my friend.
Yeah, man, that feels like an eternity ago. To be honest, I think that might have been I just torn my Achilles. I was living in Guadalajara, Mexico at that time. That was a long time ago.
And that one, I was listening to a bit of it before we started recording, but it was over 2 hours long. This one will be a responsible 45 minutes, but a lot to unpack here. Um, what's it? So I guess catch people up. I want to hear it from you.
Yeah, so now I have three children. Um, Two of them are in school, one newborn. That's been the obviously biggest change. Um, both of my 2 and my 3-year-old, we've been traveling a lot. So I think both of them had been to 5 countries before they were two. So that was fun, but it was not as easy as it is when you're just packing your bag and going.
Mm.
And yeah, we've lived in Costa Rica, Mexico, and Panama. Visited some other spots as a family, and yeah, completely different world compared to kind of my reality pre COVID.
Did you ever expect you'd be raising a family in Latin America?
I mean, raising a family for sure. I don't know if the Latin America part of it was set in stone, but we're giving it a test run. We'll see how it plays out.
Yes, the eternal, maybe U.S. versus LATAM debate for where to raise kids.
Yeah, I mean, it's an interesting debate. I don't think you get as much of the geo arbitrage as you would as a single dude. I think costs rapidly go up, especially when you factor in international school. You start paying for, inpatient health insurance, global health insurance for, a family, not just one dude. Yeah, it's a different world. I did, obviously, I think you've had this as well a little bit, but you do think about like, should we go back to the United States, go, live somewhere in Florida or wherever, right? I think about that on occasion. I wouldn't rule it out either. It very well could happen, but I think for now we're going to try to do Latin America, see how that.
And you're, of course, basically famous for this online. You disappeared for a couple of years there, a little bit as you were getting busy popping out three, and you've made a little bit of a comeback in recent months, which is kind of so we appreciate your time, and I think that there is a really unique message to share here, dude. Being honest, I think there's really like the world needs this content. Like there's not enough people sharing the experience going from being like, a cool travel the world guy to raising multiple kids and kind of getting like good advice on how to raise kids and the journey. So I think a lot of people are looking to you for advice here.
Yeah, and I kind of talked about this I think today or a few days ago on X, but when we me and you people like us first started traveling, there were so fewer people out there. And when you started looking for content online, like best of listicle type shit, it was usually for like retirees. Like there wasn't any information on like, best places for remote workers, best places for, young families, things like that. That stuff was practically non-existent 10 years ago. There was a huge cohort
Hmm.
of people talking about, oh, this is the best place to retire. These are the best towns to retire. Da, 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 da. But I think now, because post COVID, you saw the remote work, digital nomad thing really take off. I think the extension of that is going to be dudes that have been working remotely for 5, 10 years are going to take that next step, and they're going to start having kids. And then they're going to have to decide, do I want to go back home, or am I going to find somewhere down here to raise my family? Whether down here means Latin America or Asia or, Southern Europe, whatever. Um, I think we're going to see that really accelerate in the next 5 to 10 years because a lot of people like me and you, you've been doing this 5 or 10 years. You start, getting a little bit older, have a kid, whatever, and it's just a natural progression. If you spend enough time in an area, in a region, you're going to, progress as a human generally and not be going to the same bars and nightclubs you did 10 years ago.
Yeah, and at a point, this is what we're comfortable with. And I guess I got a siren going by, but this is what we're comfortable with after 5, 10 years is like, okay, Latin America, I know how to like rent a dope house. I know how to, get a nanny, all that stuff. It's almost more comfortable in a way, the LATAM stuff than the US stuff.
Yeah, I mean, that's a good way to put it. And like me personally, I haven't had like my own place in the United States since like 2014. So that would be just as much of a culture shock for me currently as it would be, it'd be less of a culture shock me moving to Buenos Aires or me moving to Santiago, Chile versus me moving back to the States on some level. Um, and obviously you've got a kid, I've got kids. We that cost, right? You start thinking about that, like private schools, international health insurance, all that stuff. And I don't know where you've come to on this, but I kind of looked at what health insurance would be in the states, and that basically negates the cost of private school. So it's basically like a break even on that. Rent is going to be, in my opinion, 20 to 25% more in the states. Um, the
Lower
biggest
in the States.
where?
You're saying rent is lower in the States?
No, more.
More. 25. Okay, sorry, gotcha.
Yeah, like maybe 20, 25, 30% depending, but
Sorry,
it's
I
going to be more
misheard.
generally. No, no, you're good.
Okay.
But the other thing on the pros for Latin America or somewhere abroad, anything service related is going to be incredibly so much cheaper abroad generally. Like to have a maid or a nanny in the states, that's expensive. Like even babysitters in the states can be $25, $30 an hour, maybe more. Daycare in the states crazy expensive. Um, so there are things I think that still offer some geo arbitrage for families living abroad, but that gap between okay, I'm a single dude, I can live down here for 2 grand, 3 grand, whatever it is a month. I can save 70, 80, 90% of my income, whatever it is. That's not reality generally when you have a couple kids in tow and you're paying for private schools and now you don't need a studio apartment, you need a 3 bedroom or a 4 bedroom. There's less inventory for those, they're harder to find, et cetera, et
Mhm.
cetera.
Okay, I was going to ask you about this. So, when you hit 2 and 3 kids, what kind of configuration do you think you need? Kind of like in hindsight, or knowing what you know now, like do you need a 2 bedroom? Do you need a 3 bedroom? Do you need a 4 bed? Like, what do you feel like you need as a guy that also kind of works from home?
Yeah. So when we had one kid, a 2 bedroom was fine. Uh, like usually my girl would sleep with our daughter. I would have my own room and office, and we were good. Like that was more than enough space, super comfortable. When we had two kids, that bumped up to 3 bedrooms, in my opinion. Even if, like, generally, my girl, she sleeps with the newborns. I don't want to sleep in that room. And then, we had the other kid in a crib in another room. I had a room that I also used as an office, had a bed in there. Um, and now with three kids, so my household includes myself, my girl, my three kids, and a live in nanny. And so we need 4 bedrooms generally. Like you're even 3 bedrooms in a service quarter. Like we need that space because if we have 3 bedrooms, then it's my girl and our newborn sleeping together in a room, our two daughters sleeping together in a room. My sister has a room, and I have nowhere to work. So at this point, with three kids and a live-in nanny, I need three bedrooms in a service quarter or four bedroom, which is not easy.
I hear you. And the idea is that you carve out one of the bedrooms as an office, essentially.
Yeah, I mean, that's what I would currently do because we have a newborn. We generally start putting our kids in their own room at like 15 months or so, which is a little bit, I don't know if some people consider that high or low, but that's kind of what we do. And so, once our newborn is, 15, 16 months, whatever, he'll probably need his own room as well. And at that point,
Wait, do you say he? Is it a boy?
yeah,
What? I thought you had all girls.
nah, man, I got a son.
Oh, congrats, man.
Thanks, bro.
Wait, walk me through this again for the audience.
The what part of it?
So I is it's two girls and a boy then?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. Why did I think it was all girls?
I don't know. I really don't know. Yeah, but I mean, the first two were girls, so it wouldn't have been surprising if the next one was. Yeah,
Okay, cool. I'm glad you got the mix. That's good.
yeah, yeah.
Um, no, but I'm very interested in this configuration because you've been you're like an apartment dweller, man. What's going on? I thought you'd have 40 acres and a AK-47 by now.
That's the plan C in Paraguay if it all goes to shit, right? But no, like we had a few medical issues with my daughters when we were kind of living at the beach in Costa Rica, and it was a nightmare. It was brutal. Some of the stuff we had to do to like get them to proper medical care in a timely fashion, like Medivac, and those costs just really started adding up. Like, we had one situation which was so fucking goofy. We My daughter was like screaming bloody murder, and her stomach was super inflamed, right? So we took her to the urgent care in the beach town. The country doctor there, oh, she's got a kidney infection. We're like, what? That doesn't make any sense. So the next day, we drive an hour. We go have her do like an ultrasound on her stomach. The ultrasound person, what are they called? Radiologist? I don't know. They're like, there is absolutely no sign of kidney infection. That diagnosis is 100% incorrect. Like, you need to go to the capital to see what the problem is. So we have to drive 6 hours to the capital. We find a pediatrician. Pediatrician's like, oh, she's having some like lactose intolerance, like not a lot, but like enough to like upset her stomach. We're like, oh, okay. So we ended up having to pay like, we did a week in an Airbnb in San Jose, had to see the pediatrician two times, got her all better, everything. But like the time and the cost of just like something stupid like that kind of turned us off a little bit to like more of that rural living. Um, some will argue that's retarded, some will argue, on my side, whatever, but those inconveniences, they can really add up.
So you're saying the value of a high quality hospital nearby is pretty high on the list.
That, and I mean, like, where we were, which is gorgeous, is a cool place, but if we wanted to get an appointment with a pediatrician, like we would call in, they'd be like, "Oh, we have a pediatrician coming in 2 weeks." We're like, "Well, my kid's sick. Like, how that doesn't help me. That doesn't do me any good." So that was
Pediatrician's a family doctor, no?
it's a kid doctor, a pediatrician.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, yeah.
yeah, like for kids, right? Like,
Yeah. The family
um,
doctor is coming in 2 weeks.
yeah,
Yeah. Because you've basically done both to give to paint the picture for the audience. You've lived in downtown Guadalajara, which is 4+ million people, and you've lived in rural beach towns in Costa Rica with a couple hundred residents. And you've done both kind of like in recently. You're actually kind of going back and forth or something.
yeah. No, I think we've thoroughly tested both. It looks cool on social media to be like some rural beach area or whatever. Have your farm with like 12 kids around. I think in practice, in reality, that's a nightmare. But again, people will argue that. I think you're better off, with kids. This is just my opinion. Yeah, you want to be next to a hospital. You want to have access to pediatricians, to good doctors, things like that. We had the same situation. We got pregnant. My girl got pregnant in Costa Rica. Um, we there wasn't a, what are they called, gynecologist. There wasn't a gynecologist where we lived. So every appointment we had to go to the capital. And if you know anything about Costa Rica, those roads are horrific. That is not an enjoyable drive. Uh, and
It's like
you know,
curvy.
curvy, like you got some pregnant chick in there on these curves, stop and start. Like it's not a good time. It's not a good time. So, and then again, like we got to the point where like every month we were in the capital for like 4 or 5 days, and it was like Airbnb in the capital, $200 a night for a 3 bedroom in a safe, nice area. We're eating out
Yeah.
every day. Like we were spending 2 grand a month just to go to San Jose every month. And so, those type of things, obviously you can set it up better than I had it set up there to do rural living, but it's, I don't know if rural living with a family in Latin America is going to work for a lot of guys. Let's put it that way.
Yeah. Maybe it's easier after you've had the kids and you don't have monthly
Yeah.
doctor appointments and
Yeah, I
everything.
mean, maybe if your kids are a little bit older, 8, 9, 10, whatever, like that probably could play with like super young kids. It's just chaos. I don't know if it's ideal.
That's a good point. Oh man, so many threads we could potentially pick up on here, but I guess what's it like having three kids, man?
Busy, man. It's just busy. Like, you want to work, you want to, go to the gym, you want to go on a date with your chick, whatever, all these things. But with 3 kids, yeah, like you really kind of have to like have a pretty strong routine. I've never been like a big routine person myself, other than like go to the gyms these days, et cetera, et cetera. But if I don't like really plan out my hours with kids, um, things get cut out. You know what I mean? Like if I don't have a set in stone, okay, I'm going to be working, these 5 or 6 hours. I'm going to go to the gym this hour. I'm going to spend a couple hours of like quality time, with kind of like a little bit with the girls, play with my son for 30 minutes, whatever. Things just get put to the wayside, and it's chaos.
Do you find you're even able to work at home, work in an apartment? Aren't they just like banging on the door nonstop? Or have you like rented an office at this point?
So my current setup, I have a behind our kitchen. I have like a full maid's quarters, full bathroom, has desk, couch, printer. It's like it actually has a window with like some natural light, so it's pretty solid, and an air conditioner. So that is kind of like tucked away. Um, I do get interrupted maybe once or twice, if I'm working and the kids are home, but it's generally kind of like so far tucked away, like out of sight, out of mind for the kids. Versus, if like they hear me in a bedroom or something, like they're in there immediately. So that's actually been pretty functional having the maid's quarter as an office. Uh, I think eventually, yeah, we may have to look into me getting an office like outside of the house. But currently, we've got kids in preschool, and it works for now.
Okay, because you get your work done while they're at school, kind of thing.
Yeah, for the most part.
Cool. So no experiences with co-working spaces?
I mean, I've obviously done the co-working space thing prior, but I don't know. I mean, again, it's like time optimization. Like, do I want to spend whatever 5 to 15 minutes to and from the co-working space, and then got to plug my shit in and all that stuff. Like, go up to the shitty coffee machine at the co-working space. I mean, like you could easily waste 30 minutes just like sitting down at the co-working space, right? So no, I
So
haven't done that
you do
yet.
all your work at home.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah,
Yeah.
can't. I mean, I've been like that for a long time. Like I don't think I've ever done the majority of work out of my apartment since I've been a quote unquote remote worker.
This might be helpful for people to hear this. Um, I think there's definitely benefits to it, but to get out of the house and lock in type of thing because there's a lot of distractions.
Yeah, I mean, it definitely depends. There are benefits to getting out of the house, in my opinion, but it just depends also on the time. I I think I do a little bit better when I'm like, okay, I'm gonna go get my kids. I've got like 4 or 5 hours this morning. Like I want to get X, Y, and Z done, and I just sit down and do it. That's been working better for me. I like to kind of have the like when again we go back to like routine and optimization, things like that. Having those set in stone times has been helpful. It's really the only way to do it with kids. But yeah, no, I've been a home worker, man. I've been a home worker for a long.
Okay, cool. I like it. Um, got a couple follow up questions here. What's it like going from one to two? Is that like a big shift? Or how? What's the biggest shift? Is it 0 to 1, 1 to 2, 2 to 3?
I mean, for me personally, 0 to 1 was obviously huge. I'm sure you felt that way as well, where it's like, okay, my life has changed, right? Um, 2 to 3 was huge, like a huge change because now, it's not like you can't split them up like one on one. Okay, mom's going to go with one, dad's going to go with one. We'll have
Uh-huh.
some like quality time. Like the numbers don't work on that now. So that was a huge change. 1 to 2 for me wasn't that big of a deal because ours were like 1 year apart. So we weren't even like out of the woods with the first one, and we were already had the second one there. So we were still in like the learning phase with the first one. The second one was there, and they're a year apart. Both girls, and the first year was a little bit rough, but after that they play together. They're like best friends, so that's actually been fairly easy. Or I think it's for us. It's been nice. It's been preferable. Like they can play together. Everything they do can be together. Outfits, food, height, like everything is just they do the same stuff. Um, so that one wasn't too difficult, but 2 to 3 was. I mean, everything gets bigger. Now you need a Land Cruiser. Now you need a Suburban. Now you need 4 bedrooms, things like that. Like everything just gets
Uh-huh.
bigger, right? So
How does the car thing work? Have you figured that out yet? Is it's like two car seats and I don't know. You tell me.
so we in Guadalajara where we were a few months back, we didn't even have a car because we were living in a pretty walkable area, and when we would get in an Uber, like I would just put the seatbelt on and hold both of them usually,
Uh-huh.
um, which in Latin America is super normal, but obviously not ideal.
Like
When we were
one
in
on
Costa,
one knee, one on the other knee,
yeah, yeah, like wrapped
in the
up,
back of the Uber.
yeah, in the back of the Uber Black, But in Costa Rica, we had a Forerunner with 7 seats, and we'd had 2 car seats in it, and it was packed. It was packed, like it was tight. I think now we're gonna need 3 car seats, so it has to be either a Land Cruiser, Suburban, Expedition, or a fucking minivan, which I don't want to get. But like those are really the only options with that.
Sprinter.
Yeah, no, a Sprinter van. Yeah, what is it? The Toyota Rush down here. No, I don't want to do that. Because yeah, with 3 car seats, like there's not a like that. It's gonna be tough. So we'll see how it plays out.
So at some point, the oldest one gets out of the car seat and maybe makes it easier because they can be like in the middle or something.
I think yeah, when they're 4 or 5, they can do like the booster seat maybe.
Yeah, the booster
Not,
seat.
I'm not exactly sure how it works, but that's. Oh, hold on
Do a
one sec.
pause. All right, we're back.
But yeah, I mean, with the booster seat, the cars, like again, that just is an additional cost. Like prior, you could get a small SUV. Doesn't reasonable cost, 20, 30, 40 grand, whatever. But once you start looking at Land Cruisers, Suburbans, Expeditions, like now we're talking 50, 60, 70, 80K for a car. It gets up there.
Yeah, it makes me think how my parents did it. Should I say how many siblings I have? But they were able to do it. Uh, I know it can be done. Let's put it that way.
Yeah. I mean, it can be done for sure. It's just there's definitely like a cutoff point where like I don't know if it's 4 or 5 kids, but there's a point where suburban life in the USA becomes the only option.
See, there's a couple interesting threads here. One is, when you're single and we're right wing and we're like 5 kids minimum, and we're just kind of talking shit, right? Like,
Yeah.
gotta have 8 kids. Um, the Irish did it, and then now that you're in it, and now that you're at 3, are you still like 5? Are you still like we got to do 5, or what are we thinking
Dude,
here?
I don't know. Like I feel like that's a lot, man. I mean, it really depends on what you want in life, but like that's a lot. That is a lot. I think we could do 4 if we spread the next one out until they're all in school, and then we do one more. I think that'd be fine. But 5 kids, like, how do you even go anywhere? Like, think about the logistics. Like,
Hmm.
you need like a 7, 8 seater. Like, I mean, it's already flying is expensive. Like, I pay for 5 flight tickets now every time we go somewhere. That's expensive. Um, I guess the age old adage of just make more money, right?
Yeah.
But again, when you every kid you add, it's like an exponential cost increase. It feels like it's like, okay, now we need a bigger car, now we need a bigger apartment, now we need another plane ticket, now we're paying for another kid in school, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So I don't know, the whole right wing 5, 8 kids, like I don't think we're gonna go there. That's not for me, but respect anybody who can pull it off.
All you had to do was get to more than 2, so that we're above replacement level. So you're already in good shape.
There we go.
No, it's really interesting to hear this stuff. I mean, dude, I had by the time I turned 16, I'd been on maybe 2 planes. You know,
Really?
yeah. Um, my first, actually, the first time I was ever on a plane, I went to South Africa on a volunteering trip when I was like 14 ish, 13, 14. It was my first time on a plane. And the, it was like hurting my ears so much. I was in toil. It was bad. But yeah, my first time on a plane was to South Africa.
That's crazy. I can't even remember. Mine probably was like 8 or 9. We went to an all inclusive at Puerto Vallarta when I was a kid. But no, I wouldn't say I traveled a lot as a kid, but I was doing a lot of like traveling basketball tournaments, which was at least like a couple flights a year.
Mhm.
Uh, so I definitely done some flights, even getting it.
Let me get your take real quick on private school. If you're willing to share, or maybe it doesn't matter, but when you were growing up, did you go to public school or private school?
I was public school, man. Probably explains a lot.
and then you emphasize this a lot when you give people like budgeting and cost of living tips. You mentioned this on Twitter. You say you got to factor in private school in Latin America. Is that because it's a Latin America thing, or has your thoughts changed? Like, a lot of expats are into homeschooling as well. Seems like that's not a priority for you. So how do you think about some of these things?
Yeah, so with when you look at the private versus public versus homeschooling, more power to the people that homeschool. Like, homeschooling while living in a rural beach town in Latin America sounds, ideal on paper. Um, in practice, spending 24/7, 365 around your kids. It is what it is. If that's what you want to do, great. But, I personally, I like, the kids get out of the house. There's, some time where the kids aren't running around being crazy, not needing to be entertained, et cetera, et cetera. Um, but when you're talking Latin America, like if you are going to put your kids in school, I do not consider public school to be an option. Maybe a few people would disagree with me. Maybe I don't know where, maybe in Uruguay or Argentina or Chile, maybe there's acceptable public schools. I have no clue. But for me personally, it's not interesting to put my kids in public school in Latin. Uh, I don't know what your
Mhm.
take on that would be, but I don't think they would get the level of education that I would like them to. Uh, so that's not really an option. And so then your two options are private school and homeschool. Like I said, homeschooling could work, but that basically for me, I'm going to be working, so that puts a lot of onus on my girl to do the curriculum and do all that. And right now, it's not reality for us. We have a newborn. She really could not dedicate 3 or 4 hours a day of homeschool, right? And then another hour or two to prep things, et cetera, when we have a newborn. Uh, maybe if once the newborn's two, maybe that becomes interesting, but it's just not the reality of our situation. So that's kind of where I'm in with that. Like, private school is probably the option we're going to go with. I would look at public schools if we ever did move back to the United States. Like that would probably be one of the benefits.
Right. And I think, something I try to, a message I try to share to people is I find that there's actually more of a range in school options in Latin America, whereas maybe I'm off base here. I'll get your take, but it's like in the US and Canada, it's public school or the private school is so expensive. It's like buying a car every year, like 30, 40K a year or more per kid. Whereas I feel like in Latin America, there's options. There's these kind of like private hippie Montessori schools, and they're not that expensive. And there's like all different options. In Guadalajara, they probably have some really fancy private schools that are like 100 years old that are, feeders for UNAM or whatever, Tech de Monterrey and all that
Yeah.
stuff. So I'm not. Have you gone like down the rabbit hole of
Yes.
private schools?
Yes. Yes. So in the states, what you're talking about, like you have the uber high end options, and then you have basically the Catholic schools, right? That are going to be
Yeah, the Catholic schools. That's
those are
like
the
that's your only option other than like full public school, right? Or
yeah,
maybe charter schools in some
in
areas, but
like a few areas, right? Yeah, so
right.
you've got the Catholic schools, which I mean, even now I think they're like 8 to 15 grand a year in a lot of places in the states,
Really?
which is somewhat reasonable. And then you've got public schools, but yeah, in Latin America, I think especially when your kids are under 7, even some of those programs that you were talking about the Montessori, about some of the other stuff, those can go all the way up to like 10, 11, I think. Um, so those are definitely options in Latin America. They are way cheaper than going to like, a lot of these high end private schools in Latin America do have like preschool program starting at like 2 years old. And it's like they cost a lot. Like I've seen some 2-year old programs in Latin America that are like 14, 15 grand a year. And
I
it's
think
like,
part of it's a Guadalajara, Mexico City thing. Like if you were in somewhere else. But with the limited time we have, I want to actually touch on a couple different things because I'm gonna be like, oh my god, these guys are so boring now. They just talk about the cost of like private school for kids or something. Um, what would be super interesting to ask people? I guess where do you land on like getting away now? Do you think like are you able to get away? Can you go to business conferences? Could you do like a bachelor party in in South Carolina or something? Or like do you like how do you feel in terms of like freedom versus like the nest and um, that kind of thing.
Yeah, I mean, when we had one kid, I could I could do whatever I wanted, right? There was no issues. Two kids, I kind of cut things back to like 3 or 4 days max. Now with three kids, we just had our third. I haven't. We did like I started taking my girls. I took my girls home for Christmas um, by themselves, right? Like their mother stayed back in Mexico because the newborn was too young to fly. So I was able to do that. But like
So you
going to like
took two girls to the U.S. by yourself and like flew by yourself, all that.
with my live-in nanny, that's also my sister.
Hmm. Okay.
um, and now like I could for sure with the current setup we have, like I could dip out for 3 or 4 days. Shouldn't be a big issue because we have help. We have the live-in nanny, we have the maid, we have kids in school. So like in our current setup today, if I wanted to go do something for 3 or 4 days, whether that be like visit a buddy in the States or, go whatever, go to a conference, I could definitely do that with the current setup. If we didn't have a live in nanny, that wouldn't be possible.
You wouldn't leave your girl with three kids. That'd be too much.
No, not with a newborn. No, I don't think
Right.
that's
Okay.
like, no.
Okay. Yeah. What advice would you have for people who are kind of maybe in this place? You know what I think. Um, One thing that we see a lot is guys that are like nomads in their 30s, and they should be kind of having kids, but they're, obviously they've chosen to sort of go off the classic track by going remote and being an expat, and it sort of delays adulting quite a bit. So you see like a lot of nomads that are like, like late 30s and still don't have kids and that kind of thing. I think about this a lot. Like how do you, like, what advice would you have for nomads, expats that want to take the next step and raise a family?
Yeah, I mean, I've got a bunch of buddies, in that classification that you're talking about, late 30s, early 40s, been living this lifestyle for 5, 10, even 15 years. And, they definitely, fit that kind of path where, they're probably not looking to have children. Um, and I think the biggest thing with that, and what I've realized with them having like in depth conversations with them, et cetera, is if you don't actually want kids, like it's probably not a good thing. If you grew up in a household where, you didn't have a good relationship with your parents and your life experiences, you just don't want children. Like, I'm not going to put my buddy too deep into this, but like there are life experiences where people just are like, I don't want to bring kids into this world, be it, things they've seen during their travels, if they've done military service, et cetera, et cetera. So I have a couple buddies who we've had in-depth conversations about this. They basically said like, I don't trust myself raising a child, or I don't want to bring children into this world, et cetera, et cetera. And, they got snipped when they were like 30, for example, because they knew that they were just completely like, I don't want to. And a lot of it wasn't even, like a lot of times you hear people saying, oh, you're selfish, selfish. So, there are people like that for sure. But there are other people who are just like very conscious about like, this is not for me. And I know that, and I'm not going to even take the chance.
Hmm.
So that was, a little bit of a rant, but I see both sides of that. Some people are just being immature, wanting to extend, childhood into adulthood as long as humanly possible. But, there are also valid reasons why people don't.
Yeah, I think, the message I try to share is like, your life is not over when you have a kid. Like, you can still do lots of stuff. People say, oh, I still have stuff I want to do, and it's like, dude, you can still do all that stuff. It's like totally just a limiting belief.
Yeah, no, I mean, and especially like, I mean, with one kid, like, dude, you're not getting held back from much. I mean, in my opinion, maybe you're not going to nightclubs all the time, because whatever, you still could. But with one kid, like that doesn't need to be a quote unquote burden. Children aren't burdens, in my opinion, but like that would be the word I would use for it. You can do everything you want with one kid. Two kids, now it starts getting a little bit more complex. But with one kid, nah, you're going to be able to do all the vacations you want, go anywhere you want. Actually, I have a friend, really good buddy, who just his girl's pregnant with their second, right? And he's done. He said two is the perfect number for me. We can still travel as a family without it being a massive headache. We can still go see all these cool places. I'll still be able to be super involved in everything in a second child's life. And he
Mhm.
doesn't want anything to do with three. He's like, two is it, and I'm done. Um, and I do think that math checks out. Like one to two, you still have some freedom. Three and above, you've got to have a pretty ideal setup to have that type of freedom.
Okay. I'm going to hit you with one juicy question as we get close to wrapping up for the people who actually made it this far. Thoughts on the age gap and advice you would give to guys in terms of what age gap maybe they should be looking for or when they want to settle down.
I mean, honestly, I don't even think about it anymore. Like it's just normal. I think anything under 15 years, like it shouldn't be a big deal, especially in Latin America or Asia, for example. It shouldn't be a huge deal. I think Latin America, for example, 7, 8, 9, 10 years, I think is pretty normal. So I wouldn't worry about it for me personally. Obviously, social media says different things, but 15-year age gap in Latin America isn't unheard of on any level whatsoever. So it's not something I really think about anymore, to be honest. Like at first, it seemed a little bit different, but at this point, it's I don't think it's a factor.
I think part of it though is for guys like the you might as like it's better to get started earlier because then there's generally less of an age gap with someone that's able to have kids because you see guys and they meet up with girls that are 28, 30, 32, and they're not maybe able to have three kids like you've had.
Yeah, I mean that's definitely a factor. Obviously, I think when you're in that situation, it probably just ends up being a financial thing where you can probably have as many kids as you want, just depending how much money you're willing to spend on medical to make that happen, right? Um, that's a good point, though. Yeah, like if you're 40 years old and you want a socially acceptable age gap in Latin America, right? You're probably looking ideally in that like 24 to 28 range. And then from there, you could have two or three kids maybe if you kind of pumped them out. But yeah, I mean, honestly, that was the first time I've thought about that. You just brought that up, in probably 2 years, man. Like it hasn't been something that's really ever been on the mind. It doesn't come up in day to day conversations whatsoever with my chick, or it's just not a topic.
Yeah, I just always remember your I don't know if they were tweets or what it was, but it was like age gap minimal. Like this should just made me laugh. But it's kind of become more relevant than ever with like the Elon Musk stuff, and he's like he's so adamant about people having kids and stuff like that, and
Yeah.
so I think this is a really good message to share is that to kind of bring things full circle to where you were talking about in the beginning. In the early days, it was all about the retirees, and there were sites like International Living, Live and Invest Overseas, right? Some of these classics like 10, 15 years ago. And then the nomads came along, and you had Nomad List, and you had a lot of blogs and city guides and stuff. And then now I feel like we're at that where like this is like the missing middle, which is the family, which is actually like the longest age group, right? Because you're only like a single nomad for like whatever 5,
Yeah.
10, 12 years. You're only a retiree for Toca Madera, 10, 20 years.
Yeah.
But you're a family for a very long time. So if it's like if you have a family in Latin America, whatever you do, you're like a family guy for it's actually kind of the biggest period of your life. And I touched my mic, maybe it picked up there, but um, this is like it's so underserved of a market. I think the expat family angle here.
Yeah, and it's interesting. The one thing I think it's going to grow simply for the fact that, when you got dudes that have been working remotely for 5 or 10 years, and they meet a chick somewhere they're been living, basing up at whatever. Okay, they have a kid, start a family, whatever. At that point, you're in that what do I do situation. Okay, am I going to raise my kid in her country? Are we going to go back to
Yes.
my country? Are we going to try to find a middle ground, place, uh, maybe, whatever? And that becomes a really, really confusing situation, in my opinion, um, because there's like pros and minuses to all of it, right? Like you stay in her country, maybe she has family there. You've got help from the abuela, the tias, all this stuff, right? Um, and she's maybe more comfortable there. She feels, like this is my home, da 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 da. Or do you take them back to, USA, Canada, wherever you're from, see if they, your chick can integrate there, see if the kids like it there. Now you're closer to your family. Or do you find that like, okay, I'm going to move to this really expat friendly, safe, beautiful place in Latin America and see if we can build a life there. Like, are we going to go to Punta del Este? Are we going to go to Buenos Aires? Are we going to go to Los Cabos or wherever? Right. And that's something that I don't think very many people have explored because it's definitely not easy. You know what I mean?
Yeah, this is I knew if we touched upon this, it would almost take the whole episode, which is yeah, it's like I don't even know how to frame the debate. It's like they used to frame it as like, do you like bring the girl back to the US, or do you, build a life with her in Latin America? And then the consensus was kind of, oh, you stay in Latin America, you don't let them get, brainwashed by American propaganda. And that was kind of like the idea, but it gets complicated with kids, and there's a lot that to
It,
explore there.
yeah, it's once you start throwing a bunch of kids into the equation, um, that I think it gets way more complicated than just that baseline argument of like, don't let them get brainwashed by the United States type stuff. Like, I think that logic maybe made sense 10 years ago. When you start factoring in kids, like, here's the thing I think about a lot, especially now that I have a son. Like, do you want, like, is your son, if you raise him in a different country than you were raised, is he going to be like you? Like, are you
Right.
guys going to have jokes? Are you going to be able to go, hang out and like do shit? Because, like, for me personally, my dad, we did basketball shit all the time when I was a kid, going to tournaments, going to workouts. He would rebound for me. We could always talk about that. Now we go fishing all the time when I go, go see him or he comes see me. We always are doing fishing trips, things like that. Like, am I going to have that relationship with my son if I raise him as a foreigner in a culture? Is he going to become more like that culture, more like me? That's something that's been on my mind a lot, and I don't have the answer.
Hmm. Yeah, these are some of the threads I really wanted to pick up on, honestly, more than even like the logistics of number of apartments or public versus private school. Was like it's like the raw emotion of some of this stuff. Like, it's like, yeah, if you raise them in a different city than you grew up, just by definition, it's going to be a very different experience for them. And uh, it's like a whole different life experience if you raise them in the neighborhood you grew up in versus somewhere new.
Well, and like for me, for example, where I grew up completely changed. Like demographically, where I grew up, now there's not even any kids. Like that neighborhood got older, all the whole area got older. A lot of those people stayed in their same houses. So like I remember when I was growing up, I mean, you would see dozens of kids riding bikes. I went back there 6 or 7 years ago. I didn't see like a single kid for like 2 days. I was like, what's going on? So there's also that factor of like where you grew up and how you idolize it. That's changed too.
Yeah.
One sec here. Good now.
Yeah, these are really interesting questions, man. And your childhood was a little bit different than mine. I grew up in kind of like a big international city that's changed a shitload. You grew up in kind of like classic middle America, and they changed in different ways. And damn, we gotta do another episode and explore some of this stuff in more detail. But this is all we have time for today. Any final message you want to share with the audience?
I mean, to be honest, yeah, I'm just, everything we've talked about today, I would say like myself personally, I'm in like a testing phase, trying to figure out like what is actually going to work long term, both location, lifestyle, everything. Um, and I think moving forward, we're just going to be doing a lot of different testing, tweaking, trying to figure out what's going to work for our children, things like that. But I'm not sure very like that many people have this figured out. If you're in a quote unquote cross cultural relationship where there's kids involved, it's going to be a unique set of circumstances almost every time.
Totally. I mean, there's something here. I was thinking about, we got to start a business or like a profile called like expat dad or something like that. It's all cheesy, but like these are like real things that like it's like you need someone to talk about this stuff with, or you're gonna go insane.
Yeah, I mean that,
Uh,
and honestly, yeah, there's, again, I think 10 years ago it was such a rare thing that, I mean, how, remote
exactly, and
work,
now everybody is in like a relationship with somebody from a different background and all this stuff, and like
yeah, like
literally everybody is dealing with this.
yeah, it's a completely different world because of remote work, because of digital nomads, because people can, live in different countries, very easily nowadays. And so obviously there's going to be more cross cultural relationships, things like that. People are going to have kids where they're going to have dual passports, things like that. I mean, it's confusing. I know a lot of people in a similar situation, and I think maybe one or two guys I would say have it figured out. Everybody else is still kind of in this like, we're good here for now. Let's see how this plays out type phase. So it'll be interesting to see how that plays out over the next few years when, like you said, a lot of people are going down this path.
Yeah, I deal with this every day with clients. People booking calls with me, and they're saying, "Oh, my husband's from Mexico. Like, can I get the residency as a plan B? Blah blah blah." Or friends I grew up with, they marry a girl from whatever country, and then I go, "Dude, you can get a marriage visa." Blah blah blah. Like, it's just constant. So with globalization, it's just more relevant than ever. So I really hope you stick with what you're doing, kind of talking about expat dad type of experiences.
Appreciate
All
that,
right.
man. Yeah, no, it's I actually, let's talk after the call. I have something I want to ask you.
Cool. So we'll wrap it up here. This has been another episode of the My Latin Life podcast. Again, our guest today, Jake Nomada, father of three. Congratulations. And guys, please subscribe to the podcast. We put out 2 episodes a week with amazing guests like Jake. And you won't want to miss an episode. We're on all your favorite podcast players, podcast apps. And we'll see you in the next episode. Ciao for now.